Good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Erickson-Kulas, and I serve as the Director of Operations and Programs at the Michelson 20MM Foundation. I'm stepping in for our Senior Program Manager for Student Basic Needs, Dr. Quina Hong, who is out sick today, so please treat me kindly. I have some big shoes to fill. This morning, I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming you to our webinar, Addressing Student Homelessness, Findings from the College Focused Rapid Rehousing Program. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that this event today is being held on the traditional lands of the Tongva people virtually, and pay my respect to the elders, both past and present. We would like to honor all the ancestral stewards of this land on which we meet today and their descendants living in over 1,000 tribes, nations, bands, pueblos, communities, or native villages. Thank you so much for joining us for what we're sure will be a rich and timely discussion. Before we get started, I'd like to share a bit of background on our foundation and briefly preview what we have in store for you today. Founded by Dr. Gary K. Michelson and Alia Michelson, the Michelson 20MM Foundation is dedicated to ensuring that everyone, particularly our most vulnerable populations, have access to equitable post-secondary educational outcomes that lead to meaningful careers. We proudly operate at the cutting edge of higher education to help forward-thinking innovators, nonprofits, and startups close the opportunity gap. For over a decade, we have served 20 million minds, the approximate number of post-secondary students in the US, by advancing student basic needs, open educational resources, smart justice, digital equity, and intellectual property education. We hope that you find the conversation today engaging and helpful in your work. We invite you to join the discussion and share your stories on LinkedIn, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Facebook using the hashtag CE, that's CEHE. We also want to take this time to share the post-survey link with you. And I think my colleague Eve is dropping that in the chat. Since we're amongst researchers, this webinar wouldn't be complete without an evaluation. So please, towards the end of this webinar, take the time to fill that out. With those housekeeping notes aside, we can now dive into today's topic. Our conversation will present findings from a 3-year evaluation of the College Focused Rapid Rehousing Strategy, CFRR. CFRR provides housing assistance for students experiencing homelessness and short-term assistance for students who experience housing insecurity. Today, you'll hear from the distinguished advocates and leaders on student housing as they discuss the importance of addressing the housing crisis among California's college students and the critical next steps we must take to ensure students can thrive. It is now my distinct privilege to introduce the presenters on the research team, Dr. Rashida Crutchfield and Jessica Wolin. Dr. Rashida Crutchfield is a professor in the School of Social Work at California State University, Long Beach, Go Beach, and an executive director of the Center for Equitable Higher Education, which is dedicated to studying and promoting economic, food, and housing justice. Dr. Crutchfield is committed to amplifying the voices of students through research and service. She has presented widely and authored articles, reports, and books about student basic needs. Dr. Crutchfield has provided input on state policy and support and advice to stakeholders across the state and nation who wish to replicate and expand policy and practice for students. Jessica Wolin is a faculty member in the Department of Public Health at San Francisco State University. She has 30 years of experience as an educator, consultant, and agency leader. She has guided the development, implementation, and evaluation of numerous Bay Area and California health programs, place-based initiatives, and systems change efforts. Jessica is also faculty lead for research and impact at the Center for Equitable Higher Education, where she focuses on the issue of basic needs, challenges facing California students. Jessica's work is guided by a commitment to research, justice, and the principle that research should promote community self-determination. Please welcome us in joining Dr. Rashida Crutchfield and Jessica Wolin.
Thank you so much, Brian. And thank you all for being here today. We're really excited to share both, introducing to some of you the College Focused Rapid Rehousing program and offering our findings from this evaluation that we've been working on for quite a long time. So we're really excited to be here. We're gonna, as you can see on the next slide, we're gonna spend a little time talking about the evaluation. Where it's a big report, and we welcome you to review it. You will find the link to the full report in the chat. But we're going to pull up some of our key findings and a few of our recommendations and really focus to hear from our experts in the panel. This evaluation has been it's an opportunity for us to hear from students who've accessed the program and from all of the folks on campuses and in community-based agencies and administrators who've really made this happen for students. This evaluation, Jessica and I are representing a large team of folks, of student, staff, and faculty researchers that represent across 4 CSUs who've been doing this work. So we're getting to share the work that has really taken place and really has benefited from the expertise of all of these people. It also is important for me to share on the next slide that this work could not have happened without our funders, both in terms of the resources that they provided, but also the thought partnership that they brought every step of the way, from the Angel Foundation, the California Wellness Foundation, the Kresge Foundation, Kaiser Permanente, Michelson 20MM Foundation, both for their support in the evaluation and sponsoring this webinar, and the Walter S. Johnson Foundation. For some context, it's really important to understand that students in college do experience homelessness. And I think that I'm speaking to the choir in this group of folks here today, but it's important to say that out loud because I think it's still not clear to everyone that students are going to college and sometimes lack a fixed, regular, and adequate place to stay. And for many students, that does mean they're living in spaces that are not meant for human habitation, or they're moving from place to place. It's also a misnomer to really understand. Some people really feel like homelessness is a binary. And on the continuum on the next slide, we show that homelessness is not just I am or I am not. That often I could experience homelessness and then be housing unstable to find housing and then fall back into homelessness. So even this continuum is a bit inadequate in that it suggests that this is an experience that is linear, that I can find secure housing all the way on the right side of the continuum and still be reaping the repercussions of the traumatic experience of having been homeless. So all of that is important to understand as we walk into this space, and also understand the framing around College Focused Rapid Rehousing, because sometimes people think, well, once you get someone housed, the journey to stable housing is over, and that is not the case. It's important to understand, as we can see on the next slide, that this is an issue that is happening across the country. Yes, the slides will be made available to you. And I also invite folks to put their questions in the Q&A function as well. But for sure, you can get the slides. Almost 1.5 million US college students experience homelessness at some point during their college experience. And more locally, 1 in 4 California community college students and 1 in 10 California State University students experience homelessness. It's also important to understand that housing insecurity disproportionately impacts Black, Latin, or Latinx students, female students, students over the age of 24, student parents, and students who are under-resourced. That it is our marginalized students who are often experiencing these issues the most. Jessica.
Thanks, Rashida. It's so great to be here with all of you today. And just to reiterate with what Rashida said, if you have questions as we go along, please drop them in the Q&A function, and we'll be getting back to you as we go along in the presentation. So the state of California has made a significant investment in efforts to address student basic needs, housing insecurity, and homelessness. Expanded financial aid is a key part of this so that students have financial support to cover tuition and expenses like housing. The state invested $85 million in ongoing funds to the 3 higher education systems to implement basic needs programs to address issues such as food insecurity, which are linked to housing insecurity and homelessness. Almost $3 billion in one-time funds have been allocated for the UC, CSU, and community college systems to build more affordable campus-supported student housing options. And finally, $31 million in ongoing funds have been allocated to the 3 systems to develop and implement both short-term housing assistance strategies and the longer-term campus community partnership approach called College Focused Rapid Rehousing that we're going to focus on today. Starting in early 2020, the CSU and the California Community Colleges both began implementation of CFRR, or College Focused Rapid Rehousing. Through a 3-year pilot that lasted until 2023, the CSU allocated resources to 8 campuses to implement the model and expand short-term housing assistance strategies as well. Although each CSU campus identified a specific partner community organization, contracts with these partners were developed and held centrally by the CSU Chancellor's Office. In 2024, the CSU made the decision to redirect its allocation of resources in an expanded fashion to 18 campuses, but reduced the funds that each campus received, resulting mostly in an expansion of short-term housing strategies. The California Community College Chancellor's Office distributed its initial college-focused rapid housing funds to 14 campuses, and with increased funding expanded to 27 campuses who are now implementing both CFRR and short-term housing assistance programs. Individual community campuses, community college campuses have established their own contractual relationships with their community partners. So on the next slide, I'm going to describe a little bit more about the model. CFRR is grounded in the Community Crisis Homelessness Assistance Model that's known as rapid rehousing. The college-focused rapid rehousing model was first developed by Homelessness, Inc. in Southern California and described by John Burton Advocates for Youth. CFRR is envisioned as a program to meet the needs of students experiencing homelessness and who are not well served by campus short-term assistance and require longer-term holistic support. The key to college-focused rapid rehousing is that it is grounded in a campus community partnership, leveraging the strengths of both the academic institution and a community housing organization that knows how to effectively serve people experiencing homelessness. The campus partner in this model conducts the initial intake with the student and refers eligible students then to the community provider. The campus also provides basic needs services and access to ongoing academic and mental health support as needed. The community housing provider in this model then confirms the student's eligibility and enrolls them in the program. Once they're enrolled in the program, the student receives case management support and is placed in a stable housing environment. The community partner provides a housing subsidy directly to a landlord and provides ongoing support to both the student and the landlord to ensure that the student remains stably housed. The goal of college-focused rapid rehousing is that students will achieve positive outcomes in the areas of academics, housing stability, financial security, physical and emotional well-being. So quickly, I want to just highlight for us on the next slide a comparison of short-term housing assistance and College Focused Rapid Rehousing, really to make clear that these are not the same thing. Short-term housing assistance is designed to address one-time, short-term urgent needs and to support housing stability and a student's persistence in school. College-focused rapid rehousing is designed to address homelessness or imminent homelessness and is designed to improve housing and financial stability, well-being, academic outcomes that include engagement, retention, and graduation. Short-term housing assistance is limited in scope and engagement, and it's provided by a campus directly to a student. Rapid rehousing, college-focused rapid rehousing, is a holistic, intensive approach, and services are provided by the campus and the community-based organization directly to the student, and the community-based organization provides the housing subsidy directly to the landlord. The types of services we see in short-term housing assistance are things like emergency grants, emergency housing on campus for a short-term stay of several weeks, hotel vouchers for a short-term stay of something like several weeks, and housing referrals. Whereas college-focused rapid rehousing provides case management, ongoing housing subsidies, and placement in stable housing. I'm now going to talk a bit and introduce us into this evaluation. This slide shows you the 8 CSU campuses and 2 community college campuses that participated in the study, and the community-based organizations that were that partnered with the campuses to implement the model. So on the next slide, I introduce how this evaluation was a critical opportunity to deepen what is known about the process and outcomes of the CFRR model. It goes beyond a mandated program monitoring and contributes to an evidence base for practice. Our evaluation seeks to understand the difference this initiative makes in the academic success and other outcomes for students. And it reveals important implications for those of you working across this country to address student homelessness. In the evaluation, we focused on the 3-year period starting in 2020, in which the CSU implemented a pilot of the CFRR model and the community colleges began their implementation. We employed a mixed methods research design and incorporated both qualitative and quantitative data collection methods. Central to this evaluation were methods to gather data from students, staff, and partners about the process and impact of the CFRR model. And now I'm going to talk about the first set of outcomes. Next slide, please. So first, we're going to focus on academic success and one of the most meaningful outcomes of this intervention. We saw that in the CSU, CFRR participants had a significantly higher probability of staying in school or graduating than students who received short-term assistance. CSU participants graduated at a slightly higher rate than the general CSU population. We saw that 12 months after receiving assistance, participants were significantly less likely to stop out of school compared to students who had just received a short-term housing assistance. We also saw that participation in the program mitigated strain and distraction due to housing insecurity. And we saw that students had a higher levels of confidence in their ability to manage work and their lives. However, we saw that there was the ongoing challenge of the need to work for many student participants, and that students still felt that they were less connected to the campus than students not enrolled in the program. Next slide, please. In terms of housing stability, we saw that college-focused rapid rehousing had a critical impact on student housing stability while they were enrolled in the program. The majority of participants were living in stable housing a year after exiting the program. However, we saw that some alumni of the program experienced challenges securing and/or maintaining stable housing. So the standard in the community for rapid rehousing is that participants are placed in stable housing within 30 days. What we saw is that the campuses that were implementing these models For the median, we're placing students in housing within 54 days, so a little bit more than the standard in the community. However, there were many campuses that were placing students in less than 54 days and a few in longer. On average, students remained in housing through this program for 9 months, which is an entire academic year or 2 semesters. The majority of participants exited the program because they either graduated, which was a tremendous success, or they transitioned into permanent housing, which is also seen as a great success. CFRR is designed to end upon graduation, and we saw that many students needed continued support after that time. And a lot of this is because the housing market is so challenging here in California, and that the transition assistance provided by many of our community partners was essential to students remaining in stable housing. In terms of the next slide, and well-being of students, we saw that CFRR participants experienced marked improvements in key mental health measures and moderate improvements in their diet. As you can see in this table, we saw that participants' general stress went down. They reported that they felt unable to control the important things in their life less frequently after participating in the program, and that the feeling that difficulties were piling up so high that they could not overcome them also came down. On the other hand, we saw that students felt that more often that things were going their way once they were participating in the program, and they felt more confident in their ability to handle their personal problems. We also saw that students reported that they were better able to ensure that they received a nutritious diet and were able to cook for themselves more nutritious foods because they actually had a place to live.
So thank you, Jessica. So regarding implementation, really CFRR works when students have seamless access to support and to implementation. For many students, this program is not well known, but when they do access the program, many students had smooth enrollment and were able to access housing and support services through the smooth coordination between campus staff and community-based agency partners. On the other hand, those students who self-referred into the program who may have Googled the program and found it and then tried to access through the community-based agencies, they faced some barriers accessing the program. What's really one of the things to lift up for sure is that broad system parameters allowed specific programs and campuses to make decisions within the context of broad directives, but still leaving room for flexibility for their students on campus and their individual needs. On the next slide, it is important to understand that the policy that funded this program was intended to support students who had the most need, who were experiencing homelessness. And participants of CFRR during the evaluation did have significant and complex lived experiences with homelessness and housing insecurity. Much like we saw the disproportionate impact of this issue on students, and that was also reflected in those who participated in CFRR programs. Black students, former foster youth were overly represented. First-generation students, transfer students, students returning to school, so our new traditional students were overrepresented amongst those who accessed this program. It is important to note that the program, as it has been, is not focused on serving students with children. A lot of these programs did not have the capacity to house students and their children. So it is evident that there is a need that is not being met in that way. On the next slide, Over the course between summer of 2020 and spring 2024, 639 students were housed with this deep investment of CFRR, and 3,949 students received short-term housing assistance, as Jessica indicated and defined earlier. On the next slide, it's important to note, again, for this program to work well, is that clarity and purpose and direction supported the advancement of the work, and regular opportunities for administrators and practitioners to convene and learn from each other was critical. When there was turnover in leadership at the top of the food chain, as well as through to staff, anytime there's a lot of turnover, and that is a part of programs and services, there's going to be institutional knowledge lost and also changes of directions in leadership and decision making. Consistency in leadership, communication, and resource allocation is necessary to really support a program like this. Further, staff of programs and leaders and practitioners with experience and expertise in housing appears to be best practice. So reiterating some of what Jessica said earlier. On the next slide, I will just add that it is the expertise of our practitioners and leaders, when they have this expertise in understanding housing, working with students experiencing homelessness, and all of the local continuums of care, that expertise is crucial in ensuring that students are placed in stable, permanent housing. And this is within the context of a challenging housing market. It is, I don't think I'm offering new news to anyone as I say that it is expensive to pay for housing in the state of California, and that continues to be a challenge. We have many recommendations in our report. We're going to offer you just a few and then yield the space to our panel to really dig deeper into some of these findings and their experiences. First and foremost, in this challenging landscape, it's really easy to get bogged down in thinking about housing for students and addressing homelessness. It's easy to push away from this problem because it is big and it is difficult. But there are many ways to address this issue, and it is evident that this program does have some successes in addressing this in ways that we haven't seen before. So investment in increasing student success is investment in programs like CFRR. Centralized leadership and infrastructure for communication and program monitoring, as well as evaluation, helps to support both the practice and the outcomes of CFRR. We also want to suggest or recommend that students have easy access to this program and programs like it, and that there is opportunity for individualized options for support of students. And we also, again, want to lift up that there is room to determine how to support students who have dependents. We think that it is critical to prioritize students who experience homelessness for campus employment. So as Jessica mentioned, though there are a lot of advantages to this program, students still had to work. And anything we can do to ensure that they're working on campus, which aligns with their overall educational goals, is important and highly recommended. And now I yield the floor to Brock and our panel.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Dr. Crutchfield and Jessica, for that great overview. My name's Brock Grubb. I'm a development consultant with the Center for Equitable Higher Education. I'm going to jump into our panel discussion in just a moment, but before I do, I want to just remind folks, we've been sharing the link to the full report, executive summary, and other resources. That's in the chat, so you can access it there. The slides, there have been several requests for the slides. We did not post the slides ahead of the webinar, but we will do our best to get them posted there quickly following the webinar. I also want to encourage folks to continue to use the Q&A function. Thanks to those of you who've been surfacing questions. We're doing our best to answer them along the way. And we'll also hopefully have some time for additional Q&A after the panel. So I now have the honor of inviting our panelists into the conversation. And panelists, if you could come on to the camera. I'm going to ask them to share reflections and offer perspective on the study from both a policy and practice point of view. But I'd like to start just by reading their bios, and then we can dive into questions. We have a lot of expertise on this call, and I'm very grateful to our panelists for making time today. First, Danielle Munoz is the Director of Basic Needs at CSU Long Beach. Danielle oversees food access and homeless initiatives, which includes the food notification system Beach Bites, Peer Navigator Program, Rapid Rehousing, Emergency Housing, Meal Swipe Assistance, and Emergency Funds. She's the Principal Investigator for the CalFresh Outreach Grant and co-PI for the CalFresh Healthy Living Grant. Danielle received her BS in Sociology from the University of California, Davis, and MS in Marriage, Family, and Child Counseling from Sacramento State. Welcome, Danielle. Debbie Rauscher is the founder of Rauscher Consulting. She's dedicated her career to working towards equity and social justice. Previously, Debbie held key leadership roles at John Burton Advocates for Youth, including Director of Education, Chief Program Officer, and Interim Executive Director. Now, she is an independent consultant partnering with nonprofit organizations, local governments, and educational institutions to drive meaningful impact. Welcome, Debbie. Thanks for being here. Wendy Rubio is the Senior Director at Lutheran Social Services of Southern California, Long Beach. She has over 17 years of experience in community service, working with vulnerable populations to improve health equity. Wendy's work results in health and resource fairs, as well as overseeing housing programs that support individuals with navigation, retention, case management, and supportive services. Committed to community empowerment, Wendy drives positive change through programs and collaborative partnerships. Welcome, Wendy. And Pamela Sepulveda is the administrator at the Falcon's Nest for Cerritos College. For 25 years, Pamela has worked as a social worker after receiving her bachelor's in human services from Cal State Fullerton and her master's in social work from the University of Southern California. In June of 2020, Pamela joined Cerritos College to create the Falcon's Nest. She has led her team to develop a basic needs center that links students to food, hygiene, housing, and financial support, in addition to on and off-campus resources. Her primary focus is to ensure a student's basic needs do not create a barrier to their academic success. Pamela, thanks for being here. I'm going to kick us off into the panel discussion, and Debbie, I'd like to start with you. This is a big report. Folks are skimming it now. There's a lot of pages here, a lot of information packed into the report. And I'd love for you to start from a policy perspective and to share with us, what do you think are the most consequential findings in this report?
Yeah, Brock, thanks so much for having me. So for folks who don't know me, I recently left a position at John Burton Advocates for Youth, and JBay was actually the sponsor of the bill that created this program initially. And the goal when this program was created was really to determine if this was a strategy that could impact retention and graduation among those facing the biggest barriers. And so the most consequential finding in my mind is that we got a pretty clear answer to that question, which is yes. It does seem that this program is effective. It was striking to me that participants in the program graduated actually at a slightly higher rate than the broader CSU population. And this is despite these students having pretty significant and complex lived experiences of housing insecurity and homelessness. Lots of difficult financial situations and a lot of other life challenges prior to enrolling in the program. So to me, this really points to the need to expand the program and to bring more resources to the program. Obviously, this is a very challenging time right now in the state of California budgetarily, but hopefully that won't always be true. And we will reach a point in the future where there may be opportunities to look at what kinds of interventions would be most effective to really address the equity goals that both the CSU and the community college systems have set for themselves. And it seems to me that this really needs to be a key component of any equity strategy. So it was very heartening to see those results. The second result from the study that really struck me was the comparison between the outcomes for students who received the more long-term college-focused rapid rehousing intervention and those who received a short-term housing subsidy. And when JBay decided to try to move this forward and get funding for this program, it really came from a lot of anecdotal conversations that we had been having with staff at the college campuses who were sharing that the resources that they had had up until that point only allowed them to do short-term assistance, and that they were finding that while there's some appeal to that because it's cheap and you can serve lots of students, in fact, it was really proving to be quite inadequate. And so College Focused Rapid Rehousing emerged as a strategy to be able to go beyond just the short-term assistance that had been provided. And it seems, like the jury has come in on that, and the long-term assistance really is necessary to make a difference. Diluting this funding and converting it into short-term assistance programs is just not going to have the desired impact. And so, I just want to comment that I know that there's been some movement within the CSU Chancellor's office to really kind of shift the way this funding is structured to provide it to more campuses than those who originally received it. I totally understand the desire for that. You want some level of equity across the system, not just a select number of campuses to receive the funding. But I think that there's a real risk in doing that the funding gets so diluted that people can't provide college-focused rapid rehousing, which was the intention of this money. They can only provide short-term assistance at that point. And then we're back to essentially providing an intervention that's not going to be effective for the students who need this support. So I would encourage anybody, whether you're in the chancellor's office and have some administrative authority, or the legislature to, think about the legislative language that governs this program, to really take this finding to heart and maybe kind of shore up some of that language so that the money is being used for the intervention that is in fact the most effective, which is the longer term college-focused rapid rehousing, rather than the short-term assistance. So I think those are the two that really jumped out at me.
Thank you so much, Debbie. And I think that's a really important distinction you're making between the findings for the short-term housing versus the findings for the more intensive college-focused rapid rehousing. And that from when we think about the outcomes perspective, there does seem to be a difference there. So thank you for lifting that up. Danielle, I would love to invite you into the conversation and to shift from sort of policy implications to thinking about a programmatic lens on this report and this model. You were on the ground at Cal State Long Beach implementing college-focused rapid rehousing, and I'd like to invite you to reflect on what you see as the biggest lessons learned from an implementation point of view.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Brock. It's really great to be here with everyone. And yes, I feel like I would need like my own entire hour to go over this, but I'm going to keep it short. I know, Pam, you're laughing. We can do like our own individual hour on this, but I want to just cover three main things today, and that's going to be, finding your right CBO, finding the right community-based organization, creating a student-centered program, and then creating systems for feedback, like a feedback loop. So to the first point, finding your right CBO. So I actually launched the first one when I was at Sacramento State in 2020, when we first got the funding. It was right as COVID was hitting. We did go to bid, and I learned so much from that process. So if you haven't stood up a rapid rehousing program but you do plan to or want to, our bid process, essentially, we got out, the parameters of the program and the funding to several agencies in the community. At that time, the amount of the one-time grant was so large and this program was completely innovative. So it's actually hard to spend down money. Some of you that run a budget knows this, especially when you don't yet have the space, the staff, all that. So we knew we would split it up between 2 agencies versus giving one agency this huge amount, and then they have all this rollover every year. And then we're wasting dollars, and then their students not being served. So we wanted to house the most students. That was like my number one thing from the beginning, house the most students with this money. So we split it up into 2, but I learned something from this process. We had one CBO who gave us very low overhead. We thought we were getting a great deal. Like, wow, they're not charging us for a lot of the overhead, though like most of the money is going straight to the rent subsidies. And then a few years later, that CBO I heard after I came here to Long Beach, that CBO went bankrupt. And so that really impacted them. But again, it's because they didn't know, I don't think, or we didn't know either, how costly these programs can be to actually run them, like to pay the staff, to even the folks that are working in the back admin offices at those places, who cuts the check, who's working with the landlords. So finding a right CBO is important. And then we ran it here at Long Beach. We found CBOs that had a little bit of well, and we also had another one up in Sacramento. The other one had a more robust overhead, but they stayed in the game longer. So, and then same thing here, we were able to find Wendy here, my partner on the panel. Lutheran Social Services had, again, like a robust existing budget. They won't go away as an agency if our money went away, but they were able to help, us build our program out, even when we were trying to figure out like what does it even take. So that was very helpful. There was another CBO here that we worked with that was fully funded on this. So if we went away, that whole program goes away. And so when we did go away, like when it ended in 2023, that did significantly impact their ability to do the work. So when you find your CBO, you really want to find a CBO that has an established service in the community. They've already been around. They're not going to go away if your money goes away. And they have enough overhead that if anything ever happens, they might be able to cover for a little bit of time, because from fiscal year to fiscal year, that can be a challenge. And again, this was a brand new program. And so there were delays and there were gaps in time when there wasn't funding. So I'm happy to talk to anyone more about the process of finding your right CBO, but we found our right CBO, and then the most students that we could were able to get housed, and the agency as well was able to run robustly. The next thing is student-centered services. So it's one of the first things we learned when we stood up the program and we got the word out is that we got so many students emailing and calling and applying that just wanted to look for affordable housing, but they were currently stably housed, but they were barely stably housed. And unfortunately, we wanted to make this program really work for the HUD, the students who met HUD definition of homelessness. So that was really challenging for us to hear a student and say, yes, we know, like you would love to get better housing. Are you sleeping in your car? Are you currently in a shelter, couch surfing? No, I'm in my lease, I'm doing okay, but I can barely make it. So I think we need to also think beyond this, and it was already touched upon, but the housing crisis itself is just really a big barrier for folks. And so when you're running a rapid rehousing program, you're thinking about, what do I provide these different levels of students coming in? And that was very apparent quickly to our team that we could not say no to them, but we could say this instead. So we really made sure to look up and work with the county and just like, what are all the affordable housing programs that we can send people to? Let's connect them back with financial aid. Let's look at their packages. So we really try to make it work for those students who didn't meet HUD definition, but were definitely reaching out. And it ended up being a great model to get folks to, like, then we knew about these students who we might not have known about before. So we did get a big group of students that we could still help, but just not through this program. So that's going to be one thing you're going to get. And then it does a little bit affect the numbers, because it kind of shows, hey, we had 200 students apply, but we only housed 20. What's that about? Well, it's because 20 met HUD definition and the others didn't, but they certainly are struggling. So there's something there, I guess, to think about. Also, what the other issue was at that time, both when I started the program from scratch at Sac State and then I inherited the program here at Long Beach, is that the rent is too high anyway. So there was this philosophical question. I'd go back and forth, and I had hired back at Sac State Dr. Arturo Bayaki and Susanna Curry, and I was just kind of brainstorming with them, like, if the point of this rapid rehousing dollars was to get a student into a lease, sure, we could do that. Can they afford the lease and stay in the lease? Is the program really designed to keep students in school and housed? Well, in that case, at that time, we decided to go with the master lease model instead. So we asked one of our CBOs to do a master lease. They got 4 homes with 4 beds in it. And then the students only paid $500 because we calculated about 30% of their income. It was about $500 a month. So we charged them for only $500 for the year, and we did a master lease model. And those were for the students who really had a high level of need, maybe reentry students, like formerly incarcerated, students with severe mental health, students who just were not yet ready to get into work. We found that the master lease model worked better for them. And then we had students who were just a little further along the way, maybe could take on a lease. And so we hired another CBO to just strictly work with the transition, like the traditional model of, yes, let's help you get a lease, let's provide some support rental assistance for a little bit, and then eventually you take over. But if we assessed that the student could not eventually take over a lease, the master lease model works. And so we were running 2 different models at the time because there was just, again, the rent was just too high. We could get you into a lease, but we were not sure. And the student wasn't either that they could actually keep the lease. And then we're back to the same issue of, well, I'm gonna have to drop out of classes to get more work to make my bills. And then we put the student in that situation. So that was not acceptable to me. So those were some challenges that we still continue to face to this day about, we can help students get into lease and provide that short-term support. But if leases go up every year, like what happens when our support's out? But does it help keep a student in school to be in rapid rehousing? Absolutely. Like that was 100% what we were seeing, is no matter what model, at the end of the day, our students were still going to class. The next thing, just quickly on this one, is training for your staff and training for the CBO. We really found out, I mean, I can say that I can predict these things, but once you're in it, you're like, yeah, this is a thing. You know, the conditions that create homelessness are chaotic, and the students' lives are chaotic still. So there were lots of things that students needed, even beyond housing or books. It was just like, I need mental health care. I need to, you know, get some like career development services. I've never worked before. I'm leaving an abusive home or an unsafe environment, and I don't know if I can live with roommates right now. So they have many different dynamics in their life and their lived experiences. And so I just wanted to make sure my team was trained, and then the CBO that we found, that they're trained to help individuals become empowered, because there's so many hurdles that they're facing beyond just getting into a room. Like, yes, we got you housed, but all these other things were still coming up for them. And so having training in mental health, reentry services, career development, and financial wellness. Mental health, reentry services, career development, and financial wellness. Those are essential for your teams to get training in. Motivational interviewing, working with TAY youth, because you're going to have to chase the TAY youth for a little bit. And they're not quite yet there where they're making appointments and then just making their first appointment. You may need to call them and be a little bit more like just nimble with your TAY youth. TAY is transitional age youth, 18 to 25. And then the last thing I'll say is a feedback loop. I immediately created an advisory board, and it would consisted of actually a lot of folks here in this team that are presenting, and some off-campus folks, like experts in the community who do rapid rehousing, and then some on-campus stakeholders as well. And then that feedback loop really was very helpful, because they were really weighing in on how long we should provide services, how much money should we charge students, how do we build out behavioral things? So I didn't do anything alone. My advisory board would help me immensely. And then I hired faculty to evaluate the program. And so they were also evaluating, and they sat on the board as well. And so I was just getting all these feedback loops, not only from the stakeholders, but from the students when Arturo and Susanna were interviewing the students. So we found a lot of things to adjust along the way. like how we presented to students. Students were getting confused. Like having too many people reach out. I don't know who's from my school. I don't know who's from the community. And then we took that information, and that's how we like restructured our intake process and giving like pictures and descriptions of who we each were and like folders. So we just like a lot of different things came out from the evaluation team that I hired and the advisory board. So I think those are the three things I'll stick to right now for time.
Thank you so much, Danielle. And I want to sort of draw a bridge. You were sort of representing the college perspective. One of your reflections was the importance of having strong relationships with community-based organizations. And Wendy, you work for one of those community-based organizations and partnered with Danielle. So I'd love to bring your voice in and ask you to share your reflections on this program, Rapid Rehousing, College Focused Rapid Rehousing. And what do you see as the traits of an effective partnership between a college and a community-based organization like yours?
Thank you, Brock. Good afternoon, everyone. It's such an honor to be here today and be part of this discussion. One of the things that I did notice is when collaborations are done well, the community-based organizations, the CBOs that have housing expertise, such as critical partners, that are able to address student housing needs. The collaboration that we had between Cal State Long Beach and Lutheran Social Services of Southern California really demonstrated how valuable such partnerships can be, especially when there is a shared vision, when there's open communication, and there's that mutual respect. Some of my reflections through our program was that through this program, we witness how coordinated efforts between the colleges and the CBOs not only provide the housing stability for the student, but really also create a very supportive environment that really helps the student to achieve their academic success, but also their well-being, and especially in addressing the college student homelessness. Students facing housing insecurity, like Danielle had shared, really come with complex challenges. And the partnerships really allows for us to work together to have a holistic approach in combining the college's educational resources with the CBO's deep knowledge of housing services and case management and community resources. Some of the traits, I would say, of an effective CBO and a college partnership, definitely making sure that we have shared goals and the vision. Both partners must prioritize the student well-being, understanding that stable housing is definitely foundational to their academic achievements and personal growth. Also, too, really having clear communication, regular, open, being transparent is important. Having the college and the CBO communicate regularly so that you could identify, the student needs. And if needed, if we have to swift coordination of services, that we're all on the same page. The other thing is definitely having defined roles and responsibilities. What is the college team is going to be providing, so that there's no duplication of services, having that clear defined roles and responsibilities. What is the CBO responsible for? So that's one of the things that I really feel that is important. And of course, having that mutual respect. The colleges, the universities, they have their expertise, and so do the CBOs. So just really working together, making sure that everybody's on the same page, having that mutual respect. I think that those are some of the things that, for me at least, that I was able to reflect on in this program.
Mm. Thank you for that, Wendy. Really appreciate you sharing. Pamela, I know we have limited time, but I do want to bring your voice in because we know basic needs insecurity is widespread across public higher ed in California, but we also know that community college students face even more acute levels of basic needs insecurity. So would love to hear your reflections on what aspects of this program have been most helpful for the community college practitioners and students.
Thank you, Brock. I can speak quickly and passionately, not to worry. The community college, I'm with Cerritos College. We are a community college that serves around 23,000 students in the Southeast Los Angeles area. And we started our rapid rehousing program in 2020. This is one of many different programs we offer. So we really do have a platter of options for the unhoused or housing insecure student. However, I have to highlight, we do not want to underestimate the need to have this service in community colleges, particularly because we are often the link between the student's education, basic needs, and economic mobility. The power of a community college to transition a person who is disenfranchised or marginalized in the community, to give them some education to either earn a certificate or to matriculate and go then to the four-year university is astounding. Our data is indicating that our students have a higher GPA that are in rapid rehousing. A higher GPA, they matriculate faster, they graduate at a higher rate. And so if we think about the big picture here, the big picture is that we want to provide education to folks so that they can change the trajectory of their life. Maybe they've been in a cycle of poverty. Maybe they're the first ones in their family to explore higher education. This is often where these folks go, is the community college space. And if at community college, they're still working 2 or 3 jobs just to put food on a table, or they don't have a table in a home at all, how can we possibly expect them to change that trajectory of their life if they are struggling with housing and basic needs? And so this is a really magical space at the community college level where we can really take this highly vulnerable population, provide them their education, either a certificate or an AA for transfer, and get them stabilized so they can improve their financial stability, which then also improves the community. I also want to comment that community colleges often don't have college-focused housing. And so because of that, this sometimes is our only option. But I will say there's great funding out there. We're hoping to receive it, that we can secure our campus housing. But our campus housing will be focused on affordable units. And so continuing to take that equity model into campus-focused housing so that we can also then look at rapid rehousing for, maybe, as Danielle mentioned, families. And I think it was Danielle who mentioned, or Rashida, somebody mentioned families. So thank you for this quick minute. I tried to be real fast, but I'll turn it back to Brock. Just don't forget those community colleges out there, because this is where a lot of our marginalized folks are, and we're just excited to be part of this solution.
Yeah, thank you for that, Pamela. Thanks for being here. Shout out to community colleges. I put the link to the report and the executive summary back in the chat. Huge gratitude to our panel. Thank you for being here today and for sharing your expertise. My job is to now pass the mic to Ryan to close us out.
Awesome. Thank you, Brock. And certainly just want to echo a big thank you to all of our amazing panelists, the research team, everyone in the audience for joining us today. We're really honored that y'all spent the time with us. Hope to connect with you and hear about the fantastic work you are doing to help your students meet their basic needs. Before you head out, we do hope that you take the 1-minute survey that my colleague Eve is about to share out. But the hope is to kind of get an evaluation of how this went and hopefully provide some solid options for y'all in terms of learnings moving forward. Please stay engaged and sign up for our newsletter and sign up for future events. For questions or partnerships on supporting the student basic needs work within our foundation, please reach out to Queena directly at qhong@20mm.org. And I think my colleague Eve is amazing and dropping that in the chat as well. Feel free to visit our website, 20mm.org, and a recording of this webinar will be uploaded to our YouTube channel by tomorrow. We'll share that email out with everyone who's registered, but thanks again and hope everyone has a great day. Take care.